Hi, I'm Maria Dunn. I'm grateful to be speaking to you from Amiskwaciwâskahikan, Beaver Hills House in the Nehio language. It's the traditional lands and gathering place of many diverse Indigenous peoples, including Nehiawak, Dene, Blackfoot, Nakota Sioux, Saulteaux, Métis, and Inuit peoples. As an immigrant settler to Turtle Island in Treaty 6, it's my responsibility to understand the truth of colonization and to work towards conciliation, reckoning, and equity with all my relations here. When I was in my early 20s, I never thought I'd be making my home here for very long. When I was 10, my family moved to Alberta, to the Edmonton area. Much as I was blown away by summertime hiking in the Rocky Mountains, as a young person, I have strong roots in Scotland, another beautiful place, and I thought at one point that I would return and settle there. 30 years later on, how am I still here? Family, community, River Valley, Edmonton Folk Fest, intrepid winter cyclists, of which I am not one, the compassionate people in my city who work so hard for a more equitable community, our vibrant, supportive music scene, including Alberta-wide CKUA radio, our folk clubs, our Edmonton Arts Council, and Alberta Foundation for the Arts. These are some of the reasons I chose to stay in Edmonton when I became a full-time songwriter-musician in the late 90s. As a volunteer DJ at the University of Alberta's CJSR, I knew many of the people behind the scenes that fostered that sense of community. And I'd already met and started playing music with world-class musicians right here. Shannon Johnson, who's produced all 7 of my albums, including 2022 Juno-winning Joyful Banner Blazing, her brothers Jeremiah McDade and Solon McDade. Creative instigator John Armstrong invited me to play Tiny Tim Cratchit in Edmonton songwriter version of Dickens' A Christmas Carol, for which I wrote and sang my song, God Bless Us Everyone, every year for the next 20 years as we toured Western Canada with that show. Another reason I'm still here is the Alberta Labour History Institute. They've been inviting me for 20 years to tell the stories of Alberta workers and community members. I've done that in a number of live shows called Video Ballads, weaving songs with oral history interviews where workers tell their stories in their own words. I've collaborated with videographer Don Bozek, historian Catherine Cole for shows about the GWG clothing factory, Packing Town, and with Indigenous women's trio Asani for a show called On the River, in tribute to Indigenous rights leader Dorothy MacDonald Hyde of the Fort McKay First Nation up in northeast Alberta. Once you start telling these important stories of people in our communities, one story leads to another. People are moved to ask you to tell more stories. And so with gratitude to my community, I'm still here in Alberta, telling our community's stories through song. In the past year, I've worked to write some new songs with blues rock singer Stephanie Harp, niece to Dorothy MacDonald Hyde, and a strong advocate for missing, murdered, and exploited Indigenous people. With all the work that we must do as a country, as a community, towards redress, healing, and equity, I'm still here, and I want to actively engage in that work. I've thoroughly enjoyed each time I've performed at one of our beautiful folk fests in Alberta. Canmore has to be one of the most stunning, set right in the Rockies. Calgary, North and South Country Fairs, our newest Bear Creek Festival in Grand Prairie, Tongue on the Post, Medicine Hat, middle of January. Along with the Edmonton Folk Fest, these all have a real supportive, inclusive vibe, thanks to the dedicated staff and volunteers who make the festivals run. But also from the shared session stages where artists trade songs and invite each other to join in and create music that only exists there, at that stage, at that festival, in that moment. That collaborative spirit, a willingness to take a risk, encouragement from the audience, is what makes so many of our Alberta and Canadian folk festivals special. And thanks to the late, great Mitch Podolak of Winnipeg for laying the groundwork for so many of them. Our Alberta festivals make room for emerging artists, giving them the encouragement and opportunity to grace the stage. That's what gave me my start, my boost in confidence. In 1997, I placed second in a local song contest. Though I didn't even win, festival director Terry Wickham heard me play a handful of my own songs and invited me to perform at the 97 Edmonton Folk Fest. For someone who'd been faithfully attending and soaking up the beautiful community of the fests for 11 years at that point, that was huge affirmation. Wow, folks are interested in the songs I'm writing. Well, in that case, I'm going to work hard to write, sing, and play them to the best of my ability. Thank you so much for listening.